Consistent self-improvement, everybody. You are now listening to American gypC Podcast. I am your host, Classic, and I'm here with my co-host,
gypC. And today we have Barbara Pamplin, and she has survived 50 days in the ICU, 3 open heart surgeries, and 3 deaths in resuscitation. Fueled by her gratitude and joy for living, she's turned it all into a self-help book called From Fat, Black, and Unlovable to Beautiful, Powerful Love. Welcome to the show, Barbara.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I like to start usually by, of course, asking, where are you from? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. So I was born and raised in Chicago, South Side. And let's see, I left, well, I won't, grew up on the South Side. My parents were self-employed, so I kind of grew up in that family business. We had a kind of a single storefront, a single building with 3 storefronts. So it was a restaurant, a barbershop, and a beauty supply, which, my father, back in the 80s was such an innovator. He's like, we're going to change this beauty supply because, the industry was changing. I'll just say that. And he made it a fried fish place because, being from Mississippi, fried fish was the thing.
Okay.
And then he's like, I don't drink, but other people do. So let's get this liquor license popping. So in the 80s, I grew up on the South Side of Chicago. I had to, family business, so I had to go there to work. And there was, I couldn't ring up the liquor, but I had to do everything else. So people would come in on a Friday night and get a case of beer, a bag of ice, and a 25-piece catfish and 3 large orders of fries. So it was like party in a box. So I was like, okay, that's pretty brilliant. But that was my youth and upbringing.
Because
I'm
sorry to cut you off.
That's okay.
We've had multiple conversations about Chicago come across the show, and it feels like, all right, we need to learn something more today about Chicago. So here we are.
It's been a while,
again.
but I got you. I can give you the 80s Chicago.
Feel free to go ahead and let us know what it was like then. And even more what you said. I'm from Mississippi. Both of my family is from Mississippi. Oxford. Yeah, born in Oxford, raised in Jackson. So
Jackson, right?
Yes.
So my parents were from Raymond and Utica, right outside Jackson.
Right outside. Okay. And that's where that land is, where we were looking at.
Let me find out. What was the name of the town? We will talk about that later.
We can fill it all in. Yeah.
What I'm saying?
Tell us about, what it was like on the South Side.
Man, and it's funny because I talk about this a little bit in my book because, I go back to those days of youth and it always has an impact. And so the 80s in Chicago, that was kind of when the crack epidemic just really exploded and it was crazy. So I remember there was a lot of gang activity, I'll say. So, being on South Side of Chicago, a Black owned liquor store, not in the hood, but because when my father first purchased the place, the building, he purchased it before the reverse of gentrification took over. So it was still a white area around there on 95th and Ashland, for those who are familiar. And so, or 91st and Ashland. And so as he came in, he actually pretended to be the fry cook, but he had actually purchased it from the white man who owned it. And they kind of overlapped to transition so he wouldn't lose all the white customers and like go bankrupt immediately. So they just thought he was there fry cooking, but really he was learning the business. And I say he, but my mother was right there with him. But in that scenario, he was learning the business before it was clear to folks, oh, this Black family owns this. And then, so by the time I came around, I was the youngest child, all the clientele and everybody was Black. And,
Wow.
And of course they sold soul food and all the things.
Wow.
And so being there and then with the liquor store, we got to see, like, my father cut hair as well. So he would cut little boys' hair. People would bring the kids in, this was, by this time it was definitely Black. And he would see these little boys and, cut their hair every week or every 2 weeks. And then as they grew up, as we're getting closer into the 80s, all of a sudden they're gang banging. But because he had cut their hair since they were a little boy, they didn't play that with him. There was a different respect, even though he didn't condone anything that was going on. And he was just sometimes so rigidly moral to be like, damn, daddy, can we just like, not be so, but he was so on that, they kind of straightened up when they dealt with him. And just to see that level of respect that he commanded. And, being from Mississippi, of course my daddy was packing. You know what I mean? Like you didn't survive Mississippi in the 30s and 40s and 50s and get out right after Emmett Till was murdered. If you didn't know, you always had a switchblade on you. You always had a gun on you. You always had a blackjack on him, as he called it, and taught us that as well. And so, he, that level of respect was there. So it was kind of weird. I was like, I grew up in the hood, but not in the hood. You know what I mean? And so there was a level of respect, because I'm like, I can't look at you any differently than me, because A, we both Black, and B, you coming in here spending money with me is helping me go buy the whatever gym shoes I wanted to get, or whatever that thing is. So there's, they really taught us to, like, you're not above anybody, because whoever prostitute, pimps, and gangbangers were the regular clientele, a lot of times it's like, we are no different. And I saw them make those choices.
You there?
So,
okay,
these places, but then like 2 blocks away is the straight projects and people suffering. So seeing that all the time was kind of commonplace. And the other, shootings and stuff like that kind of still happen in Chicago. It's wild. And, it was then, but it wasn't like to the degree it is now. When I was in high school, the most thing that would happen, somebody got in a fight, and, it would be like 40 people rumbling, and maybe somebody got stabbed, but it wasn't like a mass shooting. Things like that didn't happen in the 80s for me. But the sad thing is, the other thing I really remember, there was a time of super rats.
Super rats. Okay. I think I probably remembered that, then where Chicago was famous for big rats.
Listen, it was no joke. I have a problem. You ask my children, they're adults now. I could not for a long time watch that movie Ratatouille.
It was a good movie.
Because I would be like, oh my God, rats taking over, they're cooking food. Because, I encountered a few sometimes, and it's like they had no fear, and they were the size of cats. No joke. No joke.
I believe
so. I'm in a safe place now.
I do remember that as a child, though, that, hearing about Chicago's big rats.
Yeah, it was not cool. I don't know how
Mississippi
eventually,
has some
I think
big
it was
rats,
like a massive city effort to get rid of them.
Yeah, Mississippi has some pretty big rats as well. But
is that why my parents weren't that phased?
Possibly. Seriously, possums.
They really look like, they look like possums. That's how big they were.
Yeah.
They talked about possums a lot, but it looked like
first
possums.
Thing I
so
saw,
they probably like.
Yeah, when my visit for Thanksgiving, first thing when we got to my mom's house and just standing outside, and look across the street and it's a possum just walking. I'm like, I remember you guys.
Yeah. Walking like we was here before y'all was here with what?
Yeah, but that's Chicago is the guy brought it up the other day, one of our guests, about the connection with Mississippi and Chicago.
Oh yeah. I talk about that in the book too, because my parents were a part of that. There was kind of 2 waves of migrations from the south to the north. And from Mississippi, Louisiana, and maybe a little bit of Alabama, it's like Chicago was the destination. And what happened was, there would be a couple of family members that went there and, found really good jobs. And then they were like, hey, come on up. Or, as people were looking for a different way to go, and same thing with my parents, they stayed with family, got into those same factory jobs until they could establish, and then moved out and got their own place. And that was how so many of our people winded up in Chicago. So everybody I grew up around, people were either from Louisiana or Mississippi, period. That migration is real. As well as some of the trauma and issues we bring as former enslaved Africans in this country. Coming from Mississippi, one of the harshest slave states that there were, and being in Chicago, a lot of that trauma was still with us. But that's probably another conversation.
Well, we can definitely cover it. Like I said, we're kind of floating. We can feel free to float off track if you want to, and we can
Oh,
come
don't
back
tell me that.
to
I
it.
take squirrel moments seriously.
Feel free to float off, and we can come back to it, and so because we understand, that moment thought is pretty important, and sometimes when you want to just let it flow, you can go ahead and let it flow. But yeah,
We'll do. We'll do.
I haven't spent. I think I went through Chicago maybe for maybe a day, maybe it may have been just for a few hours with some of my relatives for taste tests of Chicago, or the Taste of Chicago.
Yes,
So
yes, that was a biggie. People come from all over the place for that.
it was the first time I tasted alligator.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so
Tastes like chicken.
Yeah,
Everything tastes like chicken.
Yeah, it tastes like chicken. That was the first thing. Yeah.
That reminds me of the scene from that show on Netflix, Lucifer, when they finally meet God. Of
Yeah.
course it's the Allstate guy. And somebody said, "Oh, that's why everything tastes like chicken. It's your favorite food."
Oh,
Oh, I've never seen that. That's funny.
I like that show.
That is funny though. Then you have Morgan Freeman that comes to mind as the God
I
of
mean, they was
Hollywood.
one step off from having Morgan Freeman play that role.
Yeah. It's interesting
yeah,
how you
it's
think
an
about the
interesting show.
rolling, the sign, or the casting competition between that role, that in particular role, or at least having an option to go. We can go either with the Allstate guy, or we can go with Morgan Freeman, but we'll be pretty close to the character that we want. It's funny how Hollywood does that.
Yeah. Oh, you were frozen for me for a second, but look like we
Yeah, I
caught up
think
now.
you froze up for us for a second as well.
Okay.
We apologize. Our internet may be tripping, or we're not too sure what's going on today. But yeah, if it frees up every once in a while, we just keep rolling. Yeah.
I'll just freeze too. And then we keep going.
Yeah.
So we just pick back up where we left off.
So you say you're in Seattle, Washington. Well, how did you end up leaving Chicago, and what was that like?
What a journey that was. I left Chicago in 1991. Anyway, I left Chicago, went to Atlanta, went to Clark Atlanta University, HBCU. Woo. And I stayed there for about 8 years. I got my undergrad degree, had a baby, and then got my master's degree. I decided to collect up while I was in the state. And then I went to New Jersey after I finished my master's degree. Stayed there for about 4 years. Then I went back to Atlanta. I don't remember how long I was there, maybe 4 years or so, and then moved to Seattle. And each one of these moves, I'm chasing a check. I'm following the job. Oh, you want to hire me and move me? Okay. So I went, kind of like those army brats. I call my daughter, especially because she was rolling with me from the beginning when I was still in undergrad. She's kind of a corporate brat, because we went where the checks were, which is what led me to here. I had no interest in being in Seattle. I was like, are Black people even there? But there are, not like in Atlanta or Chicago or Newark, but they're here. And but yeah, it's been a good experience. I'm not done yet. There's going to be another stop because I can't not retire here. I just had to wait till this last kid gets out of high school. But it was always for a better opportunity, or a job, or just to kind of expand. And I had no problem with moving. When I look back and understand why, if my parents hadn't had that tenacity to move out of Mississippi, because first place they went to was Ohio, but then that wasn't giving them what they needed. So then they went to Chicago. And although there's a massive migration from the South to the North, it still took a lot for them to leave their family. And, my mother grew up on the same plot of land that several generations before our ancestors were enslaved on. It was still, they were able to keep it in the family. I'm still learning this background story behind that. But that's significant. Like, you go back 5 generations, and the woman that was enslaved by the slave master that gave birth to all of the people that resulted in my mother, we're on the same land. So to make that move was a lot for them, and I'm thankful for it. But I think it gave me, and I don't know if that's how we're using your gypC, but for me, it
Yeah.
was like, I need to move where there's opportunity and where I can learn and grow and flow. And so I still have that. And I think my kids might have a little bit of that in them too.
Yeah, that's definitely why I got the nickname gypC, is because I moved around a lot. I was born in LA, but I was raised in Ethiopia. My
Oh, wow.
parents were Eritreans, but I moved to Minnesota when I was 10 and then lived there for 8 years, then moved to Atlanta for about 7 years. That's where we met. And
Yeah.
then DC, Maryland, Virginia, another 4 years. And then now I'm in LA. So, and I've traveled a lot around the world. So that's kind of how the
I
word
feel
gypsy.
you.
We're not scared to move around. We
Yeah.
like experiencing new things.
Yeah. And it's so important and broadens your understanding. I was talking with another guy, and he's like, with that move, but moving like that, it must give you a different perspective of humanity. And it does, because when I step back and look at all the places I've lived, there's a common thread, but also there's differences. And so it kind of trains you to see what's that common humanity thread in people. And to your point, even traveling outside of the country, we don't even have to speak the same language, as long as I can tune in on
Yep.
the humanity in you. Sign language, pictures, smiles, thoughts, all of that we can still communicate. We can still get there.
Yeah.
Although it did mess my head up one day. I was traveling this when I was in corporate, and I think I was in the airport in Amsterdam, and this Black woman walked up to me, and she's speaking another language, and I'm like, I don't speak that. So she switched to another language, and I'm like, I don't speak that either. She switched to another language, and I recognized that one, it was French. But I'm like, I don't speak French. And then she came to English, and I felt so like a dumb American. I was like, she's switching up like a freaking translate app, and I'm sitting there like, I don't even know. And all she wanted to know is why the plane was delayed.
Yeah, that's very common where I come from. Like most people
Yeah.
know like several languages.
And I
I'm
need
like,
to know another language. Yeah.
It's like we grow up here, we barely, English is just weird, period. But
Yeah, we should definitely know
that's
multiple
again, when you go
languages.
outside the country and outside your comfort zone, it's like, wow, like we have the superiority complex in the US, but nah, you are not, you're not that.
And it's funny to look at it, as I even look at it now. It's like, why? And I think it's even more of being blessed as well, being in the US. You could say that some of the other circumstances where people are kind of forces them to have to learn two languages.
Agreed. Colonization to begin
Because
with.
I guess even looking at myself, like, the discipline wise to completely learn and master language, and I'm definitely in a bunch of environments with, where I can pick up or use the language, but it has been my lack of discipline that has stopped me from mastering another language. And it's also because I have not been forced to have to, learn a language just to communicate, or just to even get a job, or just to do certain things. But, so I can see that may be one of the reasons why a lot of us, we don't, as far as know.
Like, dang, we could at least do Spanish.
Yeah. I'm in LA. I'm like, I'm supposed to, and I've start the book, but I just, it's like, come on, complete it. It's like, you don't talk to people enough in Spanish, so you don't need it. And that's the subconscious.
it is
a lot
hard
of times
to learn it after you're grown, though. Like,
Mhm.
the only reason I know several languages is because I knew it from birth. So it's
Right.
just a lot easier. But I've tried to learn like French and Arabic, as an adult, and it's hard to keep, the discipline. And if you're not immersed in the language, in the
Right.
country. So I told myself, when I go to that country, I'll spend extended period of time there to learn it, because it's really hard to like teach yourself or yeah.
Like, was it Duolingo, and Rosetta Stone can only go so far.
Exactly.
Yeah, you got to
You
be
need
able
the
to speak it.
conversation.
And a lot of times when it's time for me to practice it with someone else, it's like a nervousness, and you freeze up and you don't know what to say. And it's like, so that's one of the
But you got
things
to
that I
try. But that's the
realized
thing
once
about
I
little
come to.
kids. They'll give it a try and maybe even butcher it up, but they're going to keep trying until they get it, until
Yeah.
what they're trying to communicate is gotten across and they
Yeah.
get whatever need that is met. And to your point about immersing, so I spent back in 2017, right before all of the stuff that, you kind of mentioned in my intro, I had spent 3 weeks in Salvador Bahia, Brazil.
Mm.
And for 1 week, for the first week, I went by myself. And then in the next part of it, for the last 2 weeks of it, I was with a group. So we were traveling and doing things together. But that first week that I was there, I had my Google Translate app, and I had been practicing on a Duolingo just so I could know basic stuff, like be able to say I don't speak Portuguese or
Yeah.
that I'm American, or to ask for things, like I had that basics. But what I noticed is after the first week and then after the full 3 weeks, I was able to communicate some of those things a lot more fluidly than when I first got there. And I was actually starting to learn more. And I was like, oh, this is what that immersion does. Because if you're trying to order some food, you're going to figure it the frick out.
Yeah.
Or somebody and numbers are universal. And I learned how to say, I don't remember it now because it's been a while, but when a waiter or somebody wanted to sell me something on the beach, I would learn how to say, write down how much it is, because a 4 is a 4 in every language, unless there's another way to write numbers that I haven't found, but I don't have to translate that. Just write it down. So I know what I'm dealing with. And so, just finding those ways to figure it out and work it through, it builds you in ways that, just everyday living can't. You got to have a little courage and a little vulnerability.
Yeah. I had an exchange student from Brazil when growing up. Our family, of course, we grew up in Jackson and West Jackson, which is, basically the hood. But my parents were a little different as well. My mother was. So we had an exchange student to stay with us. And then I went and stayed with him for a year.
In Mississippi, really?
In Jackson,
That's
Mississippi.
what I
Yeah,
asked.
he got the
your mom was
experience.
real different.
Yeah.
Advanced, like next level. That's dope.
Yeah. And my brother and I, we also play the cello. Yeah. So yeah, we grew up in the orchestra. Very different. So when I was 15, I went to Brazil for a month, and
Wow.
like those small words still stuck with me, even though I lost some things, from like you said, as soon as you said, it's like, oh my God, I know how to say that, no falo Portuguese, yeah, that's one thing that stuck with me. Yeah. But so yeah. Oi,
What part of
tudo bom.
Brazil did you go to?
I was in Araras, and it's about 2 hours west of São Paulo. Yeah,
Okay, got
Araras.
you.
Yeah.
I'm acting like, I know where that is, but yeah.
A lot of people don't. Yeah, even a lot of Brazilians don't know where it is. So
But that means you got a for real experience.
oh yeah, it was, man. I still have to go back. Yeah, we're
Yes.
probably planning to go back this year sometime. He keeps stabbing at me on when I'm coming, but
yeah,
it was a priceless experience. My brother got a chance to go, and like I said, I didn't speak the language either, but it was still that shining of American, and so didn't have any
one of
kind
the
of
things that
problems.
stood out to me that was so amazing, like I knew that, for me being in Salvador Bahia, that was kind of the epicenter of the slave trade, and they, for much longer than it was in the U.S. They started going to Brazil 100 years before they started bringing the slave ships to the U.S. And, things operated differently. And so they kept a lot of their African culture, and you can see the influence of it everywhere. And it would always amaze me because people would walk up to me speaking Portuguese. And when I would tell them that I was American, or I would say that I don't speak Portuguese, but they could clearly hear my accent, they would be like, Americano? So I looked like them.
Yeah.
They thought I was one of them. And the reality is they are, and we are, because, it could have been the same family on the shores of West Africa that got taken to 2 different slave ships. And so ancestrally, you are my cousin. And I'm sure that happened a lot. And just walking around with that reality was just so powerful. Like, this is a whole nation and they all look like me. Not like what you picture when you think about Brazil and Rio de Janeiro, but like
Right.
Salvador. They blackety black.
Right.
Like, for real.
It was same
So,
thing in Peru as well. Like, I was surprised at how many people look like me. You go to some neighborhoods, it's a lot of them. So there's a
yes.
lot of influence down there.
That's why I don't subscribe to that term minority. We are not the minority.
No.
Only if you
not at
keep
all.
dividing us up.
You
I don't even
can
use that.
yeah,
Nope.
you can go to the South right now or even just type in, what's the population of Jackson, Mississippi, or what's the population of this, and they're gonna give you the numbers, and it is don't look nothing like a
Nothing like the
minority
minority.
type of place. So no.
And then when you start looking at that globally,
Yeah.
dude, they got us duped. Nah.
But yeah, I'm talking about the numbers definitely don't match. And even something you mentioned earlier, I guess, to go back to the family history. You said you were going back into generations to see, and we also did that with my father's family to
Mhm.
kind of just see where some things were going. And yeah, we still had land back then, and there's this kind of similar story, which is weird that the slave owners gave us the land, and it's like, okay, we're missing something here.
Yeah.
Where did
Man,
the
I got
slave
some
owner
questions
go?
out to some relatives now. Like, what? What was in there? What was that? What was happening?
Right, because that's, I guess, as I think about that now, where did, I guess they say if the slave owner passed away and left the land, and you were, or our family members were either sold or given, then how did we get the land? Where was the sympathy that, okay, we're at least going to give you the land? We like that. Something doesn't make sense there.
Yeah.
And we even, for my particular family, because my uncle, one of my great uncles, did the research, and he explained that he learned as an adult why we weren't really able to, why they weren't able to go see the burial sites of the grandfathers and things like that, or their ancestors, and to come find out as an adult that our family members were buried in the same cemetery where white people were buried. And they were trying to do the math, because to be buried where the white people would be buried, you have to be quite a high status. And a lot of the families, the names in the streets in Oxford, a lot of them are some of the families that's still there in the city. So
Interesting.
it's a mix up. It's a weird.
There's an
walk
aspect
into
to the
history.
history that we're not being told.
Yeah. And that's why we're kind of trying to piece it together by asking a lot of elders.
Who sold you the land?
Yeah, just what was going on.
If the story wraps up to what they say the story was, then how did we get the land?
And some of, like, my father, I talked to him, the mother's passed. My father is still with us, and unfortunately he has dementia. And so for him to go back to being 5 years old in 1939 is very easy for him, and the memories are vivid. So we talk because it's comforting to him, and I learned stuff. I learned so much that as a kid growing up, he would have never told me, like, for real.
I say you should record those conversations if you can.
Actually, that's a smart idea.
It is
I just
something
been kind
that,
of writing them, but
I did that with the conversation I had with my great uncle, and I'm able to go back and listen to it, and still listen. Little things I missed here that he said that definitely connected some dots. Emotionally traumatized from, I can look at my father's, life and see, some things differently. And a lot of us now, and what's funny is that I can care about it, but the rest of my family, certain members, nobody really cares. There's not enough time. We haven't had enough time to really kind of, certain people haven't had enough time to really think about it and dive into it and see, where your family go back to, what your great grandfather did, what your great great grandfather did, and how the land shifted hands, or how our family left from over here and came over here. Like you said, you left
Like there's a
Mississippi, went up to
story behind all
Chicago,
of it.
and there's a reason, there's a fear, there's a hustle there's a secret. There's a lot of things in the history, or at least just knowing the land, basically.
And the stories that land can tell. So before I go there, I just want to say, in reference to that, there's other family members that aren't interested. There's always, like, that's your charge.
Yeah.
That's the thing that has been given to you, because there has to be someone to keep their ancestors alive. Because the reality is, man, if they didn't survive what they survived, we wouldn't be here. And not one of us, I can't stand it when people say, I'm not my ancestors. No, you could never be your ancestors.
Yeah.
Because they survived horrendous conditions, but still found a way to have babies and nurture them so that more babies could be born, so your ass could be here.
Yeah.
So we got to honor and respect that. And, we're taught, conditioned to not, but there always has to be someone that's going to keep it alive, and that's going to expand it and give light to it, especially now, because we've been going through things as Black people in this country, as Black people on the planet, as humanity with coronavirus. Like, we need to go back and understand some things on how we got here, the good and the bad. So I commend you, and I'm thankful that you're doing it. And we're going to talk after this, because both of our peoples from Mississippi, somebody knew somebody. This is not an accident.
Yeah, that's very possible.
Like, for real. Somebody, I met this one woman who was from Chicago. She moved to Seattle, and I met her here. She worked at a tech company. I worked at a tech company. We both wind up in kind of the same spiritual organization. And as we were talking, turns out, because she got into doing her family history, and she's like she could be my daughter. She's like way younger than me. Her family was on a plantation in Virginia, and part of my paternal family was on a plantation next door in Virginia, and somehow both wound up in Mississippi. And so kind of I practice African spiritual system, and our Oluwa was like, your ancestors might have ran away together. We were like, because there's too many coincidences and just weird. So we need to research that some more. But things like that happened.
Yeah, today I saw a post on Instagram by Lil Duval, was, and it was like a duck that was turned over mean mugging, and it was saying, right when you get comfortable, Harriet Tubman comes in and say, "We leaving tonight." and that was it was like the face that was on, and I had to think about that. It was like, yeah, but you have, there's two sides to that story. It's funny as you think about that, for those that left and those that stayed there. And it's just, it's definitely two sides to the story. And even how you mentioned, and I had to think about it, like, because now a lot of people use, I don't want to reproduce because I don't want to bring a child into the world that we're living in. But back then, they were still being romantic and still reproducing, bringing kids into this world,
even though it was going to likely result in.
Uh-oh, I'm sorry, you froze. No.
Oh man.
Uh-oh, you froze for a second. Back. Okay, yeah, there you go.
Oh man. Why is it doing that?
Uh-oh. Sorry, we'll get it 1 second. 34 minutes in, and they want to act like this. Okay. Are we here?
Yes.
All right, we're here. We'll keep going. Okay, where were we? That's what the internet did, tried to get us sidetracked.
It ain't gonna work. I don't know. I lost track, but we were just talking about the people. The ancestors was taking over.
Still being like, romantic. Yes, they were still being romantic.
Oh yeah, still having babies. Yeah,
and still being peaceful. Loving. Yeah, and that was, just to think about that is like, man, yeah, different breed, completely different breed. Grateful for all of it. And like you said, some of us yeah, we wouldn't have been able to make it in that time.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of strength must you have to endure that and find a way to continue to exist within that and still be, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot, that's why there's so much trauma and things that we still to this day as a people have to work through, because that trauma doesn't just go away. Epigenetics says it comes with us to the next generation and the next generation until it finds a resolution, until folks like you or folks like me say, okay, what did my people endure that I'm here to help them get through? All of us get through. Because that's why I'm even thinking about it, is because they put that thought in my heart. They put that thought in my mind to say, damn, we here for a little bit more than the freshest gear and, turning up.
Yeah.
Although that's a part of it, because they didn't get to do that. So yes, we need to enjoy life too.
Yeah.
But you have
But
to break
not
the generational trauma and the cycles, or else you just keep repeating it until
And it has made us
someone
the
breaks.
strongest, some of the strongest. It still has made us some of the strongest, especially with your story. And I guess we
do want to get into
your
that
story.
as well.
Oh yeah, that.
Yeah. Let's get into that before
we led with that, and
the
they're
internet
like,
is
what?
like, it's too good. Let's, yeah. So yeah.
Because I mean, and to like all of that we just talked about led to the thing. So it was like it's all relevant, because even the ancestral part, the stuff from Chicago and all of that, it all led to that moment when the thing happened that had me in the hospital for 50 days and going through that. And now it's like part 2 of that journey, that now I'm aware of it. It's like, okay, what you gonna do with it? Don't do it. All right, what you gonna do?
So what did happen? Why were you going through all of that?
So I had what's called an aortic dissection. So I'm just minding my business one morning, coming out the bathroom, and I just felt a sharp pain that felt like a lightning bolt hit me in my chest, traveled through my body, out my rectum, and back around again, and kept cycling. And I was like, whoa, is that a heart attack? What the hell is that? And so I went through the mental check, because I have a lot of heart conditions in my family that, and I say that like that because when you have these things that are, they say they're genetic or things that run in your family, that's a thing to look at closely. What is that? Not just from a physical perspective, but spiritual and energetic. What is that that's trying to find resolution? So I had a lot of heart stuff in my family. So I was like, this doesn't seem like a heart attack. I don't feel like I'm having a stroke. Like I'm diagnosing myself, right? And and so I get on the floor, and my husband at the time was outside, and so I knocked on the wall to get his attention, and he comes in and he's like, "What's going on with you? Like, what's wrong? Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I think I got gas." When I think about what was happening in my body now that I know, and I'm like, I thought I had gas. Side note, Black women, understand, own your pain and voice it. We don't have to be strong for everybody. I was so disconnected from my body and really being able to say I'm in distress, I really didn't recognize it. And to this day, when I go to the doctor, I have to be like, all right, let me actually go in, because I may have been tuning some stuff out. So that's a side note.
That's a very good point to make, though. Thank you.
And it helped save my life on multiple occasions throughout this process. So he said, should I call the ambulance? And I said, I think it's just gas. I've literally said, don't call the ambulance. I think it's gas. But at one point he said I was talking to him and I stopped responding. I didn't collapse. I was just zoned out. He looked in my eyes and it's like I wasn't there. And I have no memory of any of this. The next thing I remember is waking up, laying across my bed with my husband and 4 white men in my bedroom. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And he had called the ambulance, and the first set of EMT came, and they saw that, and obviously it had a conversation with me that I don't remember having.
Wow.
And they felt like it was something cardiac. So they called for the cardiac EMT. So that was a 2 set. So I had like a regular emergency ambulance drivers, and then I had the EMTs that specialized in heart issues and conditions. So they get me to the hospital, and give me pain meds and give me something for indigestion, test to see if I was having a heart attack or stroke. It wasn't any of those things. And then before I was about to be discharged, and they had already started the paperwork, the doctor was like, okay, so where's your pain level now? Because they gave me the meds, I think probably through an IV, so it's supposed to work really quickly, and they were really powerful. And when I gave him the number, you know how they say, where's your pain from 1 to 7 or 1 to 10? And it was still high. And he was like, it shouldn't be that high. We just gave you a lot of medication. And another side note, I'm thankful for that doctor because he listened to me when I said I was still in pain. And I'm thankful, even though we're divorced now, I'm thankful to my husband because he wasn't going to let them just say, okay, yeah, it should be all right, go home. So then when I said that my pain was still where it was, he said, let me do one more test before we discharge you. I don't think this is what it is, but let me just be sure. And he pulls out a Sharpie. And again, I don't remember a lot of things, but I remember him pulling out the Sharpie and drawing on the sheet next to me thinking, damn, he just destroyed that sheet. But he drew a picture, image of a heart and an aorta, and he explained what an aortic dissection was. Because, no one knows their anatomies for me to even know what that was.
Right.
Yeah.
And when he explained it, and aorta is like the tube that comes from your heart, and this is in my words, the tube that comes off of your heart to pump blood everywhere else it needs to go, every organ, every artery, everywhere it needs to go. And that's a tube that's made of 3 layers, like a toilet tissue, 2-layer toilet tissue, 2-ply. This one is 3-ply. And for me, my dissection, the inner layer of my aorta tore. And with that opening, every time my heart pumped blood went between that first layer and the second layer. What's supposed to be like a single barrel shotgun became like a double barrel shotgun. I can't even do that with my hand. I don't know. And aortic dissection is 99% fatal. Few people make it to the hospital. And when they do make it to the hospital before dying, they get misdiagnosed and die. And so only 1% of people survive it. I found that out later. And but he didn't think that that's what I was having. He just did the test just as a little throwaway. Let's just see if that's just to rule that out before you go home. And my husband was talking to him because he was a chit chatty guy, and he said the doctor got the phone call. He answered it with my test results, and his whole face changed. The white guy got pale and got real serious, and he was like, "Okay, we need to go into another room." And so we went into, I guess I was like, well, in ER, you kind of like in these gurneys and set up in a different way. So they actually took us into a room where I was about to be admitted and explained what I was having and that it would require an immediate open heart surgery like now. And it was going to be a 10-hour surgery, and there was a 50-50 prognosis of whether I would make it through the surgery or not. But it wasn't a choice of whether to have it or not because I wouldn't, make it through the night. And so it was like, damn, okay. I just remember thinking we got to call the kids. And so called both the kids, and we just told them, I had a checkup and I just have to have a little procedure. So I'll be good and love you. I didn't want them to worry. I didn't want them to have that weight, but I wanted them to hear my voice one more time, and I wanted to hear theirs.
Yeah.
So went into the surgery, survived it. What the surgery was itself, it was basically reducing my body to a corpse, removing all of the blood into a bypass machine, lowering my body temperature to about 14 degrees for about 30 to 40 minutes of that whole 10-hour period. My body's just there. And so they had to remove the part of the aorta where the tear was and replace it with a synthetic material called Dacron. So I have a synthetic material tube attached to my heart and attached to the rest of it. And when I dissected, that double barrel went up into my carotid arteries and all the way down into my iliacs and towards my kidneys. And so it was like from the rooter to the tutor. And hopefully y'all can be okay with me being funny about it. Because
yes,
you're good.
Very funny about
see it right now.
But that's good,
That's
though.
great,
That
yeah.
you're positive about it.
Yeah, energy.
It took a little minute, you know what I'm saying? But, we're here.
Right.
And I'm thankful I made it through that. And, that's where my understanding through that experience, my understanding of something greater than me and of ancestral energy, because they was like, nah, you ain't going. We don't want you here yet with us. You still got shit to do there. We need you there. And that's the feeling when people ask me, what was it like? Because after that, after the initial surgery and surviving that, my heart stopped about a week or 10 days later.
Mm-hmm.
I had recovered. I was walking around the ICU. You know, there's a whole process to recovering from open heart surgery. I was in kidney failure because my kidneys weren't getting blood or oxygen. And so I had to have dialysis every day. And freaking shout out to diabetes patients and kidney patients that have to get dialysis every day or anytime, because that is the most strange, evasive feeling ever. To have your blood leave your body, go through a machine, get cleansed, and come back in. It's not painful, but it's somewhat painful. And every time I did that, I had to do it. I just kind of panicked in the hospital room. And so going through all of that, I was a couple of days from about to get discharged, and I'm walking around and I'm talking to my husband on the phone and a friend of ours in New York. And they said, and I went into the bathroom. I remember this much. And I literally had on my son's Christmas hat because this is like, by this time, it's almost November. And they said all they heard was the phone hit the floor and they kept screaming my name and I wasn't responding. And then they heard nurses saying, "Oh my God, cold blue, cold blue. Did she break her neck? Where's all the blood coming from?" And so what happened is I was in the bathroom, my heart stopped. And so I collapsed. And when I collapsed, I hit the wall and slid down. And when I hit the floor, I bit my tongue. So that was all the blood. And when I slid down in the emergency, there's an emergency cord to call the nurse. My body weight pulled the cord. So they came in immediately. Now tell me if that wasn't somebody saying, okay, we need to make sure things go a certain way.
Yeah.
So they were working on me, giving me manual CPR because I just had the open heart surgery. So they couldn't use paddles to bring me back and to get my heart beating again. By this time, my husband made it there and they was like, "Oh, it's been 20 minutes. Should we call it?" And he was like, "No, you're not going to call it." Thankful for that. So they kept trying and I came back. I say I came back or I was sent back. I don't know which one. And then about a week or so later, it happened again. This time I was in the bed. It was in the middle of the night. The nurse came in and was asking, because, you know, you're in a hospital. There is no rest. Someone is coming in every 2 hours. Especially for me, I got blood work a couple times a day. They did a chest x-ray every day. They came into the room. So all these things that happen every hour or two when you're in intensive care. So he came in, he's like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I feel horrible." And I say this because I read my medical charts. I don't remember this. My medical records from that stay are about 600 pages. And then I collapsed when I said, "No, I feel horrible." I collapsed into the bed. CPR, according to records, it took about 25, 30 minutes to come back again. And this time they said, "We got to get her back into OR." So opened me up a second time, removed a blood clot that they think was the thing that caused my heart to stop beating. Checked everything, closed me back up. This time, I believe this was the time they had to add titanium plates to my chest because 2 open heart surgeries and a lot of manual CPR, everything was weakened. And so I still have them today. When I go to the airports, I'm like, yeah, things are going to be.
Wow.
And so this time I knew what happened. They explained to me. Between the first and second times, I just thought I went to sleep one day and woke up the next day. I didn't know what happened until they explained it to me. And then, so now I'm kind of, and every time this happened, I had to start over with recovery. And it happened a third time. This time I felt it coming. I felt myself dying. I felt myself leaving my body, and I was able to say, "It's happening again, and I don't want to die." And it was in the daytime, and my husband was there when it happened, and my surgeon had just left my room from doing his daily check when it happened. So it was all hands on deck. I mean, every time it definitely, you know, all of the cavalry would come in. But this time I was a participant in it, and I was like, I don't want to freaking go. And it felt like I was clutching the walls to stay in my body. And I say this in my book. I kind of describe it like, you know, that scene from Get Out where Chris is kind of getting sucked in and they're taking over his body and he's like going to the dark place or the sunken place.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. I was seeing everybody getting further away and I was getting further away.
Wow.
until I was not there and flatline. And even, because my husband was there and he said he was kind of helping me to breathe and telling me to stay in my body, but he could see me leaving, even just looking in my eyes. So according to the medical records, it was another 30 minutes of CPR and oxygen and all the things to try to get me back. And I came back, or was sent back, and they put me back into OR again because they found that my heart, there's a sac around your heart that's called the pericardium, and it was filled with fluid, and they didn't know where the fluid came from. And so they had to get me back in surgery, not only to drain that fluid, but to try to understand what happened. Is it blood? Is it fluid? Where is it coming from? And to see if there was something wrong with the dissection repair. And it was pretty exploratory, like really trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And so when I came back this time and I woke up a day or two later, this time all the tubes were still in place because they were like, we're taking this so slow. Because all the other times, by the time I woke up or came to realization, because it's a lot of morphine, that's a hell of a drug. Mm-hmm. All the tubes were gone. So that's why I didn't necessarily remember and know that I had been through the thing. That this time they left everything in. And let me tell you, I was intubated, so I had a tube down my throat. Because I was intubated, therefore I couldn't eat, I had a tube in my stomach, so liquid diet. Because I couldn't move, I had a catheter, so I didn't have to go to the bathroom. And because of the fluid around my heart, I had a chest tube to make sure it was draining. So I was like a freaking science experiment, and I couldn't move. But the thing that pissed me off the worst is that I couldn't talk. And so, side note, when people are just this whole thing with COVID, I'm like, you don't understand how uncomfortable it is to be intubated, to have a tube that you rely on to give your lungs breath, to not know. And, they would take it out. When they eventually took it out, I still sometimes had to have like the little oxygen tank next to me, just to feel like I wasn't panicking, like I can breathe, because breathing on my own was so difficult. That is nothing to play with, to not know if you can take your next breath. So that's just another side. Like no, people that are healthy and don't have health issues can't fathom the idea of being intubated and can't be that bad, like in the movies. Nah, bro.
I know it's terrible. It has to be absolutely terrible, because I can barely handle a headache. So even just sitting here listening, it's like, it's like, oh my God, hats off.
It's a childbirth, all the things. So
all of it.
You can just imagine with this pandemic, I was like, oh no, going in lockdown. Y'all can deal with all of that. I'll come back out when it's when things are better, which things are a little bit better now. So I take calculated risks and do all of the things. But anyway, side note. So yeah, I survived all of that. And some things that stood out to me is, one, no one is in intensive care that long. The goal for most hospitals is to get people stabilized and out of intensive care, because that's a high level of care and quite expensive. But they couldn't move me. So 50 days in intensive care with nurses 24/7. And each time, maybe you get one nurse for every 2 people when you're in intensive care. Whereas in the broader hospital, it may be one nurse for 10 people. So that's the difference in just the level of care and equipment and everything. So I knew all the nurses very well. And they had a stake in my survival. And I felt that every time they came into the room. The nurses, the doctors, even the cleaning woman, every time I had an episode, they would come in and be like, oh my God, we're so glad you're still here. Because nobody thought I was going to make it. I look at my medical chart, and at one point, the ICU doctor said, death is imminent for this patient. We can only try to make, I forget what the rest he said in it, but those words reverberated to me like, death is imminent. Ha ha, no, it ain't, bitch. No.
No, you're good.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, thank you. I am from Southside Chicago.
No, but trust me, you have all the right to express yourself how you feel.
Ashe.
Yes.
And so, and having doctors who very, I'm talking about I'm not to put a value system on what specialty of doctors, but the reality is ICU doctors, pulmonary doctors, and heart doctors are some of the most wealthy, but also some of the most, and particularly the hospital that I was in, have to be some of the most well-trained to operate on a heart or, some of those major functions. Well-trained, very scientific. And I had doctors coming in like, you're a freaking miracle. And I don't understand what kept happening and how you keep coming back. And how you aren't losing. They told my husband, even after the first surgery, she might have learning disabilities, mental disabilities. She might have physical disabilities. I ain't who I was before, but I don't have any major disabilities. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no.
And all of that, I say, I shade to my ancestors, because the strength that got me through this is the same strength that got them through the things that they had to experience. So they was like, we're lending all of this to you. Stop tripping. And so I'm thankful that experience just was like a supernova change event for me. And I'm into numerology. I was in a year 9, which are endings and death. Approaching, I got out of the hospital, what was it, December 8th, December 9th. And then by December 23rd, which is my birthday, I turned 46 and entered the year 1. So it was like my ending was for reals. Like all of how you used to roll, playing small and not realizing your power and your gifts as a Black woman, not standing in that shit gotta go. You gotta move forward with a different life now. And, it's been 5 years, almost 5 years. It'll be 5 years in October. And it's been step by step, but I wouldn't change that experience. I mean, it's not great, whatever. Dang, ancestors, Most High, could we have done this in a different way? Less traumatic, but okay, get it. I get it. I was hard hit. So, but like, okay, let's roll with this. Let's do this. What is this teaching me? What is this that's for me and for other people? Because when I did the research, very few people, obviously aortic dissection, but in terms of Black women dying from heart disease, 50,000 every year. And those are just the ones that we can clearly identify what the issue was. And I talk about this in the book. To me, that said that there is something, a pain that our ancestral mothers, that we're being called to resolve now, to bring some resolution to bring some healing to. Yeah. And that's where I went in deep to understand and trace back. How did I end up almost in the morgue? Where did this start? It didn't start with me. Okay, my mother dealt with stuff, who passed away from a sudden heart seizures back in 2006. Okay, what about her mother? What about all of my ancestral mothers and the heartache that they've experienced? What is it that they're all teaching me? Because they were all there like, nah, you're not coming back here with us right now. You need to do some work. So that was kind of the premise of my book, is to understand this event that happened to me and what did it mean that was bigger than me? What did it mean from my ancestral lineages? What did it mean that of something that I could share with other Black women so they didn't have to go through what I went through, but still get the lessons without getting my pain? Yeah. And so that's been the work. That was the book. That has been the work since then, with my website and holding events. I actually have a few more books that are in the works. Some are anthologies with other women right now. And one is a follow-up on my first book, because healing doesn't stop. It's a spiral. I have learned more now since publishing the first book that I can bring greater context to. But I can go on and on. So I'm going to pause. You can actually ask a question and interject.
No, trust me.
Well, I guess I wanted to ask, like, every time you checked out, like, did you go somewhere? Like, you talked about I was sent back. Like, what was that experience? Or was it just blackout and then you're back here again? Or, what is that like?
The reality is I'm still unpacking it. And I've done some, when I looked into these near-death experiences, right? I found this one article and series, I don't remember what it was, that basically said a lot of times when people have these experiences, all of the medical interventions make it difficult to remember.
Mm.
All of the morphine and the anesthesia and all those things. And I kind of felt that it took about 6 months before my mind could operate at the capacity that I was accustomed to really get all of that out of my system, all the morphine. So, but at the same time, I vividly remember what I thought were hallucinations. And I'm laughing because some of them were hilarious. Like I was awake and having the hallucinations. Like I had some friends that would come to visit me. And somehow in my mind, when the nurses came in, they weren't actually nurses. They were my friends in disguise because they wouldn't let them come visit me. So they had to disguise themselves. And there was at one point when I asked one of the nurses, "Can I see your ID?" And I looked at the ID and I looked at my husband and I was like, "See, this ain't her." I was fully awake, but I really believed it. So I'm like, I'm not going to discount all those things that I was seeing and experiencing as hallucinations, but just my mind is trying to figure out what to do with all of the stuff.
Yeah.
But I do I don't have a clear memory of that, what happened, where I was on that other side. But I get a very clear, and I talk about this but a very clear feeling. You know how when you were a little kid and you might be outside playing with your cousins or with friends on the block, and your mama in the kitchen and she hear you because you cussing or cutting up or doing something, and you get called in the house and told to act like you got some damn sense and represent her properly and going back outside and play. That's what it felt like. That's why I kept saying I got sent back, because it felt like I got snatched up, told to get my shit together, and sent back. And why did it happen 3 times? Because I'm stubborn as F. Dude, I was in the hospital. I can't even barely think straight. And I'm on my iPad trying to order Uber Eats for my son for dinner because I got to make sure he eats dinner, even though it's a lot of other grown people around that can just take care of that. I was determined I was going to be the one to order the dinner. Like I wasn't releasing and surrendering in between. And
I was going to ask, like, why. I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask, like, why you kept going back and being said there was something you were stubborn about, clearly. And then apparently you learned. And
yeah. And, and still learning, because surrendering is an ongoing process when you're used to forging ahead or controlling things or doing things because it got to be done. Like, this wasn't one that I could do. I was in there. I told the nurse, "I think I need some dialysis. Can you order that for me?" It's like, this is not the time to be the boss bitch, okay? So, if I was like in the ancestor realm looking at me, I'll be like, what the hell is she doing? You need to talk to her again. Come here.
Oh, no. But I can definitely, grasp that visualization of what you're explaining from, having to be disciplined, or at least knowing how to notice some things. I can say personally, I think I've noticed how to kind of stay out of trouble, or I listen to them pretty good. And I can say that, it even led me to leave Mississippi with like $400 and like, just, all right, just go and get out of here. you got to get out of here though, so it's amazing to hear it, just to hear. Like I said, I still can't even think about how you made it all the way through. I'm sitting here like, all right, I'm talking to her, so she survived it. But during this story, it's like, why is there like, I don't think she's gonna make it. Well, she's here. She made it. So that's really how intense it is. Like, oh my goodness, But yeah, it's definitely.
But it's magic. Like the way you took it, it's like, oh, there's a lesson. I'm supposed to learn a lesson from it. Okay. And versus like, oh, why me? And all of that stuff.
Yeah. Because I guess my philosophy always was, or at some point evolved to this: there's no way, if my divine right, and I don't care what religion you follow, we weren't created to suffer.
Yeah.
So if I'm suffering, it must have a purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's my job to figure out what that is, or the suffering gonna keep trying to get my attention. And I want this shit to stop. So let me go and get this lesson. And more importantly, honestly, once, I got through things, there's no part of me that wanted my children to deal with this. So this gonna stop with me. Like what I gotta do, what we gotta do, because there's no way I want them to deal with any parts of either, whether it's a dissection or heart issues or any kind of major thing that causes you to have to reshift and rethink. Let me do that for them, for all of the people that I'm genetically connected to. Let me solve this thread of the equation, because it's come up for me, so it's mine to do. Let me do my part in that. Otherwise, and again, I practice African spiritual tradition, and so that idea of reincarnation back through your bloodline. Otherwise, I'm gonna come back in a few generations and have to still deal with this shit. Nah.
Once
I
you
want to deal with some
understand-
new things. We want to handle this now in this life.
Yeah. It's like once you understand reincarnation and karma, it's like you understand, like you go through life a whole lot differently. You're like, I'm not trying to come back. No.
Like, not with this thing. I want to be dealing with, like, oh my God, how do we get plants to grow bigger? I want some other issues to deal with.
Yeah.
And I can tell from your energy that you're pretty much grounded in love, even with you saying that one of your things was you still wanted to order food for your son, of course, meaning, of course, you're centered, of course, off the love for your kids and your family and life in general. Was that something that you grew up with, or did you grow up in the church, or did you grow up, I'm sure your parents saw it. Some of us are all different. Of course, you could have siblings and they still won't vibrate the same way you vibrate with love. So what is one of the things that help you with staying grounded with that?
I think it goes back to me from literally my conception. It was my purpose. My brother, I had four older siblings and only one brother. My brother, my family was on a vacation in Indiana, outside of Chicago. They were the only Black family there at a campground. And my brother drowned in a swimming pond surrounded by families and people. So it was a very suspicious accidental drowning in 1968. And so my parents, everybody was devastated. There was so much guilt and grief. Like, why weren't we watching him? Why did my sister walk away when this little girl said, come, let me show you a doll? Like, all of the things that people do when you lose a child that I can't even imagine losing a child. And then they wanted to have, I'll say my father wanted to have another baby. He wanted to have another son. He wanted to be able to give honor to my brother and try again, raise a son again. But what he got was Barbara. He got me, which is why my name is Barbara Cecile Williams. That's my birth name, so that I would have the same initials as my brother, who was Bobby Charles Williams. And so I literally was born out of this need to love that child that they lost. Now, with that came a lot of guilt from myself, because I'm like, damn, somebody had to die for me to come here. So I had to deal with a lot of that in the first 20, 30 years of my life, learning to love myself.
Wow, that's precious.
But coming in, that was the purpose. I realized, again, after a lot of therapy and a lot of things, that my purpose in coming into my family was to bring love back into the house. And part of my challenge, I had to find my path back to loving myself. Because a lot of years I had major depression. I did not love myself. I would argue that even when this happened, I didn't know how to love myself. And that's been part of the challenge that I've been given, is you got to learn how to love yourself, because that's the beginning of everything. And so, yeah, that's my foundation. And then how do I keep that alive is doing things. So it's so weirdly simple, but also so hard to do, doing things that I love to do. Doing things that bring me joy. showing and expressing love to others. Now, this is a hard one, without expecting a certain condition of love back. Meaning, I might have certain needs, but someone's capacity to love me in the way that I need just may not be there. Right. They don't know how to do that. But understand that, and not saying that I need to withhold my love because they don't know how to love me the way I need to. That's okay. I can just radiate love. It's taken a lot, including this experience, for me to be able to accept that and to practice that as much as I can. And I say as much as I can because if I was done, I probably wouldn't be anymore. I would just like levitate off into the space because I wouldn't need human experiences anymore. Mm. But, you know, you're absolutely right. Everything is based on that foundation of love and learning to love myself, learning to express and radiate love, and anything that I can do to help other people realize how to love themselves, especially Black women, because between racism and sexism, we're at the bottom of everything, and have been told that we're not worthy of love, we're not worthy of all of these things, and have internalized that in some ways. But society can never be what it can be until, in my opinion, Black women learn to love ourselves, embrace our power, and do the things that we do for our communities and our families. And then we can command, actually, no, you're going to treat me like this because I treat me like this. And then it kind of spreads from there. Because I feel like we're in a shit show because the earth is like, did y'all know I was the original Black woman and y'all are not treating me well? And you know, the ethers out there in space is like, do y'all know y'all all exist in the womb of we want to go into Egyptian, and you probably can quote it better than me, like some of the Egyptian goddesses, whether it's Ma'at or Neb, like we exist, the idea of the power of the original woman on this planet, of Black women, period, cannot be minimized. And the fact that we have not been honored, we haven't honored ourselves in the way that is required. And so society hasn't honored us in that way. And, you know, society is a shit show right now. So in my opinion, I got to do the work for me, heal me, help sisters heal, meaning Black women, help other women heal, and then we can get some balance to this place.
And you also still
let me figure out how to love me.
You're helping Black men heal, trust me, as well. Because, man, that story, yeah, you got to stop complaining about stuff. Basically, that's a very, very thing. It's like, yo, no, don't complain about nothing.
Mm-hmm. Get it done, get it done,
and it's funny that you mentioned, I guess, as far as one of the things that sent us into the history dive of my father's side is that his father, amazing swimmer, mysteriously died when he was 2 years old. And that was been one of the things that, like, all right, I got to learn about this guy, and then just at least learn from, go from there and figure out some things. But yeah, that's
exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely an energy there. And it may not have, of course, it was there as far as when they lost him then. But even now in my life, it's something that I've always been attracted to, at least knowing, more about my grandfather. And it's definitely some type of energy connection dealing with, the bloodline.
I agree.
Yeah,
it's something about the water. It's almost, and I'm off the cuff right now. All of it's been off the cuff, but I haven't really clarified what it is, but there's something with, it's almost like my brother was sacrificed to the water, but not really. That's not the right word. Like there's something energetically with the water and drowning and suns. That's why I was like, I haven't worked it all out, but there's a connection there that I'm trying to understand. And, I know it'll probably come to me in the middle of the night sometime in a dream, and it'll be like, oh, that's what that meant.
And behind my grandfather's death was created the family rule, never go fishing on a Sunday.
Wow.
Which had, as you know, growing up as an adult, and this was, you know, out of respect for my grandmother, who's passed now, but that was something that, you know, was taught to us. It was something that it didn't quite make enough sense then, because as kids we still snuck off and went fishing, but we didn't quite understand it, and we knew he died going fishing, but as kids growing up, that was the only story, or that was the only connection there. So we received a family myth of fear that was handed in a generation of don't go fishing on a Sunday, or and that wasn't the case. And it was, you know, it's been a learning process, and a opening up. It opens your brain up to kind of realize, and we're all lifeguards. Oh, my siblings, there's 5 of us. We all were once upon a time certified lifeguards.
Wow. See, your mama wasn't playing. I see.
Yeah. So
she's like, y'all gonna get up out of here. You're gonna do some things. You're gonna explore.
Uh-oh, you froze up.
Oh, man.
Are you there? Uh-oh, we're frozen.
Shoot.
Maybe it's not our internet. Uh-oh, you there?
Yep.
We're back. Okay, we're back.
I told you, I just freeze when I
116.
see it happen. I just stay right there.
Okay. Yeah. But that was one of the, she did make sure, as far as we're lifeguards. And something, like I said, she came and visit last year. Just turned 70 this year, but she swam in the pool with us here. You know, so that's something that, you know, we definitely, and yes, Black people swimming is a stereotype. I was a lifeguard, you know, in the South, barely had to save 1 or 2 kids. You know, no, that's just a stereotype. All the kids swim real good. They, for $1, they go to the pool, they're exposed to water. Yeah. But at least used to be able to. City pools are now, a lot of them, I think, are closed. In that in particular city, that's another conversation as well. Yeah.
Access to things. Hello.
Yes. Yeah. But it's quite a, you know, it's quite a mystery. Some of the powers that our DNA hold, traumas that it holds, the like I say, even for you to be able to live and understand and experience and kind of be able to become aware of what's going on this in particular rock. A lot of us are becoming more and more aware of what's going on Earth, and the connection between like Mother Earth and everything. So that's something that I hope a lot of people do grab from this episode, and kind of grab from the podcast. And one of the reasons we have a platform is to kind of share a lot of energy, learn from really all kinds of the, you know, everybody of the world. But we're definitely, a lot of people are definitely asking questions and want to know this connection with, you know, mind, body, and soul.
Absolutely.
And how to use the magic that you know we've been lied about.
Because it's definitely like, come on, look what we survived globally.
Yeah.
Look what we've survived. We still here. We still here. Like, that's some biblical. I'm gonna just talk how I talk. That's some biblical shit.
Yeah. It is. I'm telling you, it is.
Like, what? And something you said reminds me, and it's like, dude, I swear we got some common ancestors somewhere. In my book, one of the chapters, I talk about Plantation Proverbs. And it's these phrases that we grew up hearing from our parents, that they heard from their parents, that they heard from their parents, that started on the freaking plantations, that have a completely different context and meaning now. Some not so beneficial because we don't need that. Yeah. And, you know, like one of them I talk about was this idea of, this is a common one. When you Black, you got to work twice as hard to get half as far. And that is, it's still absolutely true. But I talk about what that did to me mentally, that pressure that placed on me, even, you know, not that long before I had the aortic dissection, this idea is every time I walk into this corporate job and I'm the only Black person and I'm busting my ass, I'm doing the work, I'm coming home, I got my husband taking care of the kids, I'm coming home and putting in more work till 3 o'clock in the morning, and this white boy is going to get a promotion and a raise, and all he did was repeat the same shit somebody else said in the right room with the right people. And, I'm not saying that they all are like that, but that is, that's the common thread. I'm literally putting in the work. So it's not, I had to learn, is it the hard work, or do I just need to be more strategic, or to actually be successful? Or do I just take a step back and say, maybe I don't give my brilliance to corporate America anymore. And I, live within smaller means and do something else. So those were a lot of the decisions I had to make. But that idea of, I literally got to work twice as hard to get half as far, gave me so much pressure and had me working so hard. And, it just wasn't beneficial for me anymore at this point in our lives. And there are a few other things like that, but that don't go fishing on a Sunday, man, that's another plantation proverb.
Yeah.
And, there's the more general ones, but then there are ones that are very specific to our families that we got to flip them and reframe them and do something different. They were trying to give it to us out of love, out of, not wanting us to suffer the same things that they suffered. So the good intentions were there. It's eventually, it didn't serve that intention that they wanted. And so we got to take ownership of those and do different things with them.
Yeah.
Before we get ready to close it out, would you like to share anything as far as about your upcoming projects, links, special message that you like? And we always invite everybody out, and we always say, hey, if you're ever in LA, come by, sit in with us, and have an in-studio recording session as well.
I will keep that in mind, because, man, like I said, my daughter lives in LA. I'll figure out where exactly eventually.
Yeah, we're in downtown LA. Yeah.
All I know is I went to downtown LA to this restaurant. She took us to Perch. Are you familiar with that?
That one, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I've had.
I haven't been there, but I've heard of it.
It was freaking dope. It was like on a rooftop, like you got to take some secret pathway to get up to the elevators, up through the elevator. It was beautiful. Yeah. So that's my memory of downtown LA.
But it's constantly changing. They're actually cleaning up for the Super Bowl, and that's a whole different conversation as well. That's, man, we've seen a homeless, encampment basically that's been there
since before we
moved here. Yeah, and they just cleaned it up for the first time, and it's like, wow. But we don't know.
And then did what with those people?
That's a good question. Well, some of them are across the street.
Well, some of them
on the sidewalk. Yeah,
they gave them vouchers to hotels, but these are temporary. Every time they clean it up, they always do something temporary that's not really helping long term.
Yeah. So that's that. But you're saying, I guess, give them links to or tell them about your book.
Yes.
And everything.
So my website is beautiful-powerful-love.com.
Okay.
My Instagram is beautiful_love. Wait, no, beautiful_powerful_love. So beautiful, powerful love. You just got to put the little underscore in between each one. Okay. And same thing for my Facebook page. To keep track, I have my book. So the book I published in 2019, and I just relaunched it last year along with the audiobook, because that is how a lot of people want to consume content and consume books. And, depending on where you are, it can be a heavy read, and just listening to it is much easier. And when I talk about in the book, one of the things I do is I offer kind of a framework for working through to becoming aware of who you are and working through some of those ancestral things. And I call it the work. And so some of the things in there are like meditations or visualizations, and that's much easier to hear. And a lot of it has to do with journaling and things like that. And so the audiobook is there, ebook, print book. I have a workbook that'll come out. It's actually available for pre-order now, but I'll be actually releasing it in April. And then of course swag, because if you go on a walk, you got to be able to drink your Black Women Are Dope as Fuck water bottle, which is the hashtag, hashtag Black Women Are Dope as Fuck, or AF, I'll say that. So there's swag on there that reflects that, because again, everything is about remembering who we are and from which we came, and literally the power that we have to change our lives and to change the world. And so it's Beautiful, Powerful Love for all of the information, website, Instagram, and Facebook. And I will say on my Instagram, the link that I have there is a link tree.
Mm.
I am running to be, I don't think I shared this with you before, but it's happened in the last couple of weeks. I am running to be Inked Magazine's cover girl for 2022.
Okay.
Because I have this ink that means something to me. And I'm like, why not break some barriers? Because I would probably be, when I look at their past winners, first Black person, the person, because I just turned 50. So, when I turned 50 in December a couple months ago, I was like, I'm doing all the things because I give no F's anymore about what anybody thinks. So I'm running for that. And right now I'm number 5 in my group. And it goes on until March 17th. And so you can vote daily by signing into Facebook, or people can buy votes. Otherwise, you can only vote one time daily. And as we go further along, I'm going to definitely need those votes daily because I want to break some barriers. I want to have like a 50-year-old big body Black woman on the cover of Inked magazine. That's what I want right now.
Yes, so those listening, vote.
Vote.
Yes. And like I said, the link is in my link tree on Instagram because it's a whole Inked magazine / thing, blah, 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 blah. Just easier to go to my Instagram to get it.
Okay.
And we'll actually put all of the stuff that she said on the description, all the links. I was curious, you mentioned audiobooks. We love audiobooks. I was just curious, do you read your audiobook?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. For those trying to make audiobooks, from a listener's perspective, I love it when the author reads the book, because sometimes they get other people to read their book, and I'm like, I want to hear it from you. I don't want to hear it from another voice. So.
It was never even a consideration because, one, to your point, sometimes voiceover actors don't even know how to pronounce a thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is not how you say that. Why did they let that go in the recording?
Yeah.
And because this is so much of my personal story, I had to do it. And I will tell you, the process of recording the book, I went through a whole nother level of healing. Because it's one thing to writing it was a level. Then, all of the edits and rewrites was another level. But reading that book, and with the producer on the other end, so I'm like reading it one-on-one to another person, there were times when I'd have to be like, okay, we got to stop for the day, because I was emotionally going back through all the things that I was talking about and reprocessing them. And then when you get the recording back, and I had to listen to it, I got to listen to myself tell my story in detail. I can't just zone out. I got to hear when something's not right so I can correct it. Yeah. I was like, wow, y'all are really not playing with me, huh? Okay, you're going to make sure I got this.
The building process.
Yeah, so I'm thankful for all of it. But thank you for asking, because that was a labor of love, but one that I felt was necessary to get it to as many people as possible.
Yeah, and it looks like you helped yourself with your book. See your book, which is amazing.
That was what it was for first and foremost. Exactly. It was for my healing.
Yeah.
We're truly, truly grateful to even just be here with you and to have you here on this earth right now, to have this conversation with you.
Thank you.
We definitely, it's a very, very wild experience to just talk to somebody like you.
Yeah, so. And to have a positive energy about it.
That as well, the super positive energy. Definitely got to have you back, because I know that I wanted to ask you about diet after everything, after the procedures and everything, and changes and stuff. So we have a lot.
That's really probably like stuff like that, and the whole after is a lot of what I'm addressing in the second book, because like it's just, I mean, not just diet, kind of that, but also the revelations and the understanding, because that was like the beginning. Like I didn't like, oh, okay, I'm good, I've healed, I've evolved. No, like, nah, you got some more stuff to do, and that is worth sharing with people. So yeah, I'd definitely love to be back.
Yeah,
and hopefully I'll be in LA sometime this year.
And we'd love to learn that from you without having to go through the experience as well. That's just being honest. Yes,
I
we
got you.
definitely love to. We're listening. Hey.
And so look, listen, I'm like, I took the hit already. We're gonna expand this so nobody else got to take the hit.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced that somewhere along the way we are relatives.
Right.
Hey, that's
Consider
definitely
the
a
hit
big
taken.
Mississippi thing. Yeah, it's like, hey, make sure you do your research on who you're dating, so you know.
Dude, okay.
Yeah.
A brief squirrel moment. That was the thing I was going to with my father with his dementia. The stories he told, like, we always hear about, all of everybody doing everybody and like the back speakeasies,
Yeah.
Color Purple type scenarios. But for the first time, he described how common interracial relationships were. That's not a picture that's very clearly painted for us. It always seems like it's something that's like done in the back and like not really, really done. Like he said, the amount of white men who wanted any black women they could get, like really not just lusting after them. And so that idea of how did some of these families get the land? Sisters did what they needed to do. I'm just saying that's a possibility.
That's definitely a
maybe
good
not in all the
conversation.
cases, but
Yeah.
That's a conversation to look at, because even with me on my father's side, my great grandfather, yes, he's white, and grew up in Oxford, but we can't go and have. I couldn't point you to any of my relatives in that line, but my grandmother, she's mixed, and it comes down from there. But that makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah. Which in that case, he might have got disowned by the rest of them.
Possibly. There's another hush that we have to learn about.
Yeah.
Because we got to poke around. Hey, what happened then? Who is this? What do they do? Another one of those. So
I have a family reunion. I may have to actually go. The first time my father's side is having a family reunion in, I don't know, like 30 plus years.
Wow.
But it's in July of this year, and I was trying to figure out, because like my son graduates from high school and like there's a lot going on. I'm like, but I might need to go, because it's really hard to poke around without poking around in person.
Yeah.
Especially Mississippi, because their records, oh my gosh, the whole courthouse burned down. We no longer have those records anymore. But you got to go ask some old folks some stuff.
Yeah. And most of them are going to probably tell you, it's some Indian and he's Native American,
What was the tribe that's there? Choctaw, I think.
Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee. That goes into, I think, over into Georgia, slides over into Georgia.
Yeah.
But another conversation. And I'm telling you, it's going to be great.
Yes.
It'll be great.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you to all of the listeners that's listening and supporting.
And for the podcast, you can find us at AmericanGypC.com. And also you can find our merch, Consistent Self-Improvement, t-shirts, mugs, a lot of different products at luamlee.com. And all of this will be in the description, so you don't have to worry about remembering it.
Along with most likely a link or some links in the website that takes you to my music, KLACCIK CARPENTA, Classic Carpenter, on Spotify, iTunes, Tidal, all major platforms. And that's it. Thank everybody for listening. Thank you again, Barbara, and consistent self-improvement to everyone. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace.